Running Sentences presents A Judge, a Jury, and a Sheriff. Part 10. The Judge. Judge De Percy works hard to organize himself for his run for governor of the state. This is a work of fiction. Any names, characters, businesses, events, and situations within this story are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to real people, real situation, events, characters, incidences, and so on is purely coincidental. This is a work of dark fiction. It is not meant to be a realistic portrayal. Story written and narrated by Michael Honoré. Copyright 2023, Michael Honoré. All rights reserved. The sun was setting as De Percy stared out at the bayou he called home. A few gators were roaming and darting about the water, which was unusual, because usually they didn't do much, unless something had disturbed them. This was followed by the puttering sound of a boat which approached, and he caught sight of it. There were a few people aboard the vessel, which was a full-on boat, and not the normal airboat one blasted around in to get here and there on the bayou. In the fading light it was hard to make out if he knew these people, but he was sure that at least one of them was probably his little messenger boy, returning from another drop-off. "Hello down there, what brings you all the way out here at my house?" There were some glances upward from the people aboard as the boat came against the dock. De Percy was actually hidden by the fading light and the lights up on the house walls to make sure that no one could sneak up here, as they cast the shadow of a look over him that blurred his appearance. "Judge." "Yes?" "The last job is done." He grinned to himself at the news and stepped back from the railing. 1,000,001 thoughts were rushing about, and he felt like jumping for joy. It was too soon to celebrate, but by God, did he feel like doing exactly that. De Percy kept his feet planted on the decking and moved to head towards the nearby door to get inside. "Excellent, and now we merely have to wait for the fools to fall over themselves to try and wiggle out. Life is good as long as I know all that I know." A minute later he wandered into his office on the second floor and sighed at the sight of Preacher James Corpse, who sat in a chair smoking a cigar waiting for him. "Mr. Judge, you have kept me waiting." "Of course I have. Is what brings you here private or personal or something else? Or is it business? Is it as usual with you? It always seems to be business and money related." The judge moved over to a filing cabinet to open it up, but he did not as he stared over at Corpse, who grinned at him as he waited for an answer. There was no reading what was going on behind those eyes that were filled with such heavy deception. "You tell me." "Then it is about my little venture." "Little, if you want to call vaulting yourself into the public sphere beyond this little realm you've carved out for yourself, little, fine. But it ain't even close to that, so many people here are going to look into every little bit that you do." De Percy sighed and opened the cabinet so he could pull out a few files. "Well, what do you need from me?" "Your little messenger boy is attracting attention. Not the wisest of plans on your part, by the way." "I can't be seen sending my messages. It has to be done by someone else." "But, yeah, fine, but a person who's known to have been seen around you is fine. You're as mad as the messenger Carter is." With the files now in hand, De Percy moved towards his desk with energy and a good mood slipping away from him. Why everything had to be so exhausting was beyond him. There won't be word about the messenger when the boxes are opened. Bigger things have fallen upon them that they need worry about. "And you're expecting the rest of the town and beyond, I assume, to just go along with this?" "I had no choice in the matter. You know that as well as anyone." "Fine. Have it as you will. I came here to warn you, though. Things will not be easy, and that certain people will want to be in the loop." "You mean your job is to make sure that they get in contact with me and push them forward for jobs, should they, come my way." James Corpse offered a shrug as he rose from his chair and began moving towards the door. "They can't just have them. They have to prove themselves at least a little bit worthy. You can't just throw out there that they, want things." The preacher went out the door with a shrug and was gone from view. The judge sat there for a few seconds, looking over the files he had gotten out. It was a recent case he had ruled over, a waitress of some sort who couldn't make payments. A pity, since she seemed so upstanding, but The law was the law, and payments were payments. If you couldn't make them, the law had to rule in favor of the people seeking payments. Well, these are tools to be used, but perhaps not at this moment. I have others to tend to. He closed the file and tucked it away into his desk before heading out of his office. Stepping out of there, he gave him a view of his living room below, and he glanced down there. His two guests, one of which he did not know, were sat on the sofas. Wasting no time, he headed down towards them, emerging from the stairs into the living room and looking the two over. "Sir, get yourself some food, Carter. I have a guest to deal with first, if you don't mind." Carter hurriedly got up and left the area, as the other man sat up to look all around them. Eventually, the gaze came back to the judge, as he was looking him over as well. A thin but short man sat there with reddish hair and dark eyes, along with a nasty-looking scar. "And who are you, sir?" "My name is Alex. That's what I go by for this." "And what is this? Work?" "The preacher who was just here has been in contact with a local organization that provides what you seek." The judge had continued to study the man, trying to figure out if he trusted him. All the words coming out of the man's mouth, though, made it seem like that potentially be bad idea. "Well, I have work, but it isn't the usual stuff that most gangs get up to, if that's okay with your organization and the certain members and the preacher, I guess. It will do if it gets us what we ask for in return. Deliver results and your gang will have some nice comforts. I just told the preacher that, and now I have to tell you that. But I guess that's the way things work around here. Tell everybody everything. Now go away." The man rose from the sofa and came over to offer his hand to shake it. The judge glanced at it for a second before moving on towards where Carter had gone off to. He did not shake the hand. The kitchen was not busy, but a few guards were sitting about the place. Percy paid no mind to them as he looked for Carter. It was easy enough to spot. The man had his head stuck in the fridge looking for something to eat, or potentially drink. "Carter Willow, how has your job gone?" The head came out of the fridge and looked up at him as Carter came back with several items held in his arms. He looked rather guilty that was about ready to put everything back that was in his hands. "You already touched them. Besides, this kitchen is designed for the staff to take what they need." "Oh, right, I knew that." He grabbed a few more things out of the fridge, adding them to his pile. "How goes the job?" "All things are where they needed to be, bar one." "And what is going on with that one?" A frown crossed the face of Carter, which was not what the judge wanted to see. It meant complications, and those could spell the end of an idea before it could breathe. The last thing he wanted was for that to happen to him and his plans. He wanted this easy peasy. "Well, don't just stand there saying nothing. It doesn't help us." "Well, when I went to deliver one of the packages, I was found out about. They grabbed me and said they would take the package, but in return I must deliver one to you." "I see. Of course, you have brought it here, have you?" Percy looked about the kitchen space but saw nothing, and tried to remember if he saw Carter with it in the living room, but didn't think so. In my bag, which I left by the door since your guards didn't want my bag to come inside. I can go get it, but I don't think any of them would let me pass into here with it." "Then let us both go and see this box you are to deliver." Out on the deck, the cool evening air blew through, cutting a bit of the humidity down as they walked out. Carter scrambled a few feet away under the watchful eyes of the guards as he went to his bag and was opening it up as he set it up against the railing on the deck. The guards were instantly more interested in what was happening when he pulled out a box which had been wrapped up in a brown paper. Carter turned to De Percy, holding it carefully as everyone focused in on it. The guards all had their guns, semi-ready to do anything in the moment. "Who gave it to you, by the way?" Oh, yes, the preacher from the big church in town. I forgot his name again. He took over not that long ago, something. The Church of Saints, Preacher Thomas Corn. Why would he give you something to give to me? I don't know why. I didn't open the thing either. Do you want it, or should I throw it out in the bayou? The judge looked over at the bayou for a second. It would be a great waste to throw away a gift. It could contain something interesting, and he figured it was unlikely that Mr. Corn was trying to pull a fast one on him. Or maybe he was. Maybe this Corn was running for governor, or maybe a bigger seat. It was best to be cautious. Put it on the deck, would you? Then we will open it carefully, just to be on the safe side. The guards that were around looked anxiously at the judge as the box was put carefully down on the deck. De Percy noted the look from his henchmen and sighed to himself. He had to do all the work around here, since none of them seemed to want to spring forward to open up this wrapped-up box. "Stand back, useless fools. I shall take care of this myself, but I don't want to hear any complaints from any of you about anything, ever." After saying that, he knelt before the plain wrapped box that had a nice string on it, tying the whole thing together. Carefully, he pulled the string away, which easily left only the paper, which also came away with little effort. This left what looked to be a shoebox, and he tugged at its cover, pulling it off. "Be ready for anything, though. I suspect it will only be papers." With a yank, the cover came off, revealing exactly what he had expected. Papers. Old newspapers, though, and he pawed his way to reveal a couple of folded-up envelopes. "What did you get, boss?" De Percy curled a smile about him. He glanced up at Carter, who'd asked the question, and shrugged. "The information that was promised to me. A little late, and far more than $1 short, but it has gotten to me. The family that owns the collection agency will now have hell to pay, potentially to me." "I don't understand what you're talking about, but what's this about them, or should I not know this? It sounds like one of those things where the less I know, the better. Is that what we're going with?" With a wave of his hand, De Percy moved towards the house, not caring any more about his little messenger as he carried his box of goods inside. Feeling tired and relieved that the things were going well, the judge had made his way to his bedroom. He didn't like staying in this hideout, but with the late hour and wanting some distance between him and his victims who he had recently delivered news to, it just felt like it was a good idea. The bed was a welcome place to sit down, and he read out his new little letters that had been gifted to him. "Let us see, what is the Loxley family having from me? He breezed through the first letter and tossed it to the side. The second one was soon opened. He began reading. "The family has a poor relationship with the wife Christie due to her wanting to consolidate the company. They have arranged to try and keep things happy in appearances only. All money of the family will remain safely in the hands of those who know what to do with it business-wise." So far, this has not been as helpful as De Percy had hoped it was going to be. Family drama, while a good force to use as distraction, it rarely got people to do what he wanted them to do. It could be used for such things, but it wasn't good as he wanted it to be, and so far not so great. The third letter was ripped open, and he realized it was not on the family, but from Preacher Thomas Corn. Had this one been delivered to him by mistake? That would be good, but unlikely as he began to read it. "Dear Judge, I hope this letter finds you well as you seek the knowledge to bend this area to your will. I'm informing you of a situation that may help you out money-wise." The oddity of the letter could not stop De Percy from grinning at what he was reading. This sounded juicy and filled with potential, which could be good or bad, he wasn't sure, but still felt good. There are several families that are rich, who are from around the country and the county and the area, in the state and other states, that have submitted their loved ones to be taken care of by us. A requirement for such a thing to happen is to allow us access to bank accounts. Also, we can pay for their expenses and keep them happy. The Loxley family husband has been under our care for quite a little while. You may be able to get some money and could potentially strike a deal. And he growled at this last part. Everyone always wanted something in return. They would never simply give him what he wanted. He would have to consider this situation carefully. It's a rather simple deal. I support you in your endeavors and get power, and you do the same for me. No, I don't think it's going to work out as well as I hoped it would. He tossed this paper aside and looked towards the window, and the pitch blackness outside there. None of this would do, since he wanted to do it all himself. He didn't want to rely on anyone, but he needed to. In this whole situation, and this new offer would take a little consideration, but sleep was needed first. Yes, morning might provide an answer or two. The deafening racket of a fan roaring behind him put the little ride to town into sour mood in the morning. It didn't help, the promise of how to deal with Thomas Corn hadn't come to him yet. He growled and hunkered down, trying not to get swept up in the wind that blew against him, and against the boat's captain. The town was in sight, but he still felt so far away, and there was so much to do. And at least a little distraction from things might help. "Almost there now, sir." The words were a mere suggestion of things and were barely heard by De Percy as they were getting closer and closer to pulling up to the dock. Not wasting any time, De Percy, once they'd landed, had hurried to Main Street, towards the bank. He was going to go in, but not before he met his associate outside of it. There had been a promise of information from one about a situation. A young woman stood there nervously near the bank sign, looking around as he approached. "Miss, how are you?" "I'm fine, you?" "Living life in a grand style, so I'm good." Now, what information do you wish to pass along to me?" "You do promise to keep your promise?" "Miss Susie, why would I break my word? I am a judge. The last thing we want to do is to lose the trust of anyone." "I don't know, you didn't listen to me in court, did you?" He shrugged, since he honestly didn't care one iota. It was all words to get cooperation at this point. Well, she wasn't cooperating at this point, so maybe he would need to do something. He held up his hand and extended 3 fingers out in a sort of Boy Scout salute of sorts. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. He wasn't a scout, so he wasn't sure. "I promise I will keep it and help you in whatever way I can. Now, information. There is a growing investigation into you." "From where, Susie?" "From what I can tell, state police and government agents." "And how would you know about this? Do you work for the state or something else, or who do you work for at this point? I don't recall seeing that in your file when it came across my court." She had been pacing in front of the sign of the bank, keeping a lookout at the few cars that passed by, but this comment stopped her. "I take whatever jobs I can find thanks to you. My only concern is passing along this piece of information if you free me from your court order. Anything else does not matter." "It does to me, miss. I can't idly walk around accepting random accounts from strangers that say they're telling the truth and then nothing comes of it. Especially ones that have appeared in my court and have debts owed." You don't exactly strike a thrusting figure. Fuck you and your coal. You'll never listen to what people say. It's all rubber stamp for that collection agency with you, so fuck you and go away. You ain't selling enough for us. She turned away in a huff and stormed off. The Percy shrugged. It was fine. He sort of had information, and he sort of had an inkling that this might happen at some point. He'd rather it hadn't, but it was what it was. Upon entering the bank, he was quickly escorted to the private office of one Grumble Fred, a nickname for the most senior official at this branch. The plush, well-furnished office was a welcome respite from the usual places around town, where no one put any efforts in to make things look nice. De Percy sat down rather heavily on the chair across from this Grumble Fred. I want to go on the record that this is not a good idea. You think spending money is a waste of time, Mr. Grumble. I will take your advice into consideration, but I am insisting that we move forward anyway. It ain't about the money. It's about revealing this town's secrets. You think those would come up during an election? I'm only asking for funding for my election. Yes, I think it will, especially in a high position like governor. Those political types love to pile dirt on dirt if they think they can get something on you from under it. I will promise to be careful, Grumble. The bank manager shuffled about in his seat, not looking pleased with this, and he sort of swayed side to side, looking for that extra comfort that the chair was not providing. Well, I can't stop you from doing anything, but I'm warning you. This is a bad idea, and you know it. I need to do this, though, otherwise nothing in this state will ever change. I am the perfect person for that change. We both know that, and my father proved many times over that I knew that this was what was set in stone for me. Grumble shook his head. Things are always changing, and you know it. You just want it your way. That's fine, but I think something bad is going to happen, and I don't want to see that. Just sign the release forms and other ones so that I can get a move on already. It has much to do with this run for governor. Grumble would grumble a bit more, but he signed the appropriate pieces of paper. This would allow the bank to accept donations for De Percy's accounts for his political run for governor. The papers were turned over for the judge to sign, which he quickly did, and they were sent off to be copied so that both parties would have a version of it. Is there any other business you need to deal with while you're here? I looked over your accounts. They're all running a bit low. I will deal with that in good time, sir. Good day. I just need those copies. He would get those, and then a short walk later from the bank, he brought him to the library, where he went in. The librarian on duty waved him past to get to the back office area. This library was being set up for meetings about things involving local officials, and that included De Percy. He didn't like it, but he dealt with it the best he could. In the office area in the back, the mayor and the sheriff were both seated, busily tapping away at their cell phone screens. I see that everyone is here already. We have to be here. It is better to get here early than to wait around for the appropriate time to come. The mayor did not look up as she continued tapping away and said this. We have a job, and we continue to take it rather seriously, so, unlike you and your judgments. Well, that's a pack of lies, Sheriff, which I don't care much about. Beyond that, all I want to know is if you two are willing to be a part of my project that I've forwarded through you. You mean those nice little packages you sent out? No, that has nothing to do with me, Sheriff. That was not me at all. Right, nothing at all. One of the few people who can get into the files of our past, which show up in packages, has nothing to do with you or this. Pardon us if we don't believe you. The two still hadn't looked up from their phones, and he wanted to see their faces, that they agreed with him, and that they would shake their heads yes. Not this sort of half-subservience to him. They seemed to be running a rather independent streak at the moment, which was not a good sign. Well, the meeting is about to start, and I want your agreement to help me with my run. Now, if those packages were from me, would those have pushed you in my direction? Can't offer much help. As the sheriff says, we have our own problems keeping this town and area happy with the way things are. And I will remind you that this is all because of you that they are unhappy, so we can't really do much. No, of course, none of the blame would fall on the mayor and or on a sheriff who happened to spend the area's money on frivolous things. We all have our problems, which is why it's best to work together, yes? Wilton was shaking his head no. It will happen in good time, and when we have evidence that you, sir, are acting in good faith. The Percy's face darkened at this. They were not cooperating, and it was going to take a bunch of more pushes to get them to do so. He would have to find something else to get them to agree. I am always acting in a manner that will help myself and this town out and make it a better place. I wouldn't be here if I didn't think such things were possible. Will you please agree to help me? The two finally looked up at their phones and at him. They didn't look like they believed in one bit, which he would have to do, which was not great, but he was fine for now, and he knew he would have to keep a lookout for them and see what else he could do. So you had no assurances then? I assure you, Mayor, that I will work for the betterment of all of us, including the town and you and the sheriff and everyone around. Yeah, sure, buddy. No one will believe in that then. There was nothing further to be gained from them. They would potentially work with him, just had to get to that final piece of the puzzle that would allow such things. This whole town, though, seemed to be up to something, and it seemed to be starting with these two. More protection would be required as he stepped out of the room. The meeting of the townspeople and the trio in power was a rather short one, mostly because few people showed up and the sheriff and the mayor had little to actually say on everything. The Percy himself had absolutely nothing to say to the rabble and kept his mouth shut while patiently waiting for it to be over. It did give him time to think, though, which he used to concentrate on his opponent in the upcoming run for governor. He would have to get past a primary first, but that shouldn't be too big of a deal. It was some out-of-state person who had said they had moved here when they were young and may or may not actually live in the state, as if that made them qualified to be governor of this state. Then there was the opposing party, who never got elected anyway, so he wouldn't actually have to worry about them because, well, they never got elected. He knew, though, that relying solely on that would be, at best, a problem. No, there would need to be piles of dirt that would need to be sifted through on them, and he knew exactly the right man for the job. With the meeting breaking up, he quickly hurried off. In order to make sure that he was alone, De Percy went off to the parking lot that was vacant of any cars. He already had his phone to his ear by the time he began pacing around the place, all while keeping an eye out for suspicious things. Mr. Dane Carver, I hope I am talking to you and not your messaging system. You got the man, sir. Who is this, by the way? A local judge and person you happen to owe quite a favor to. You know the whole accidental shootout while investigating a wife cheating on his husband? You thought you saw a gun, only nothing was there. Do I need to go on, or shall I tell everyone your secrets? No, you do not need to say anything more. What is it you need from me, De Percy? Is it an investigation? It is indeed, and please, no names. I need dirt on some people who might get in my way of winning an election at a state level. You know, the usual stuff that you've done before will be fine. You're paying, though, right? Money for all expenses will be allowed, and I will pay you for this, but at a cut rate, since this is to wipe out your favor. Is this understood and okay with you? I suppose so, but in return you will owe me a little bit, since this is an uneven trade. Fine, deal, or whatever. Just get it done. The judge hung up his phone and looked up just in time to see one of his security team hurrying up to him. Sir, we need to get you to safety. What's happened? There are some threats against you. Explain in details, please. None of this vagary that you have going on will make me follow you to safety. The guard took a few glances around to make sure that they were still alone. It is my understanding that a hit has been put out on your life. The news leaked through a couple of connections who wanted to pass along the word. Who wants to put a hit on me? Stranger from out of town that's been contacted, from what we know. We're not sure he's a killer, from what we know and what we've been able to research. But we still think, we should be safe, sir. I pay you well to know these things. Who ordered the hit, not just who is the killer. We're still working on that part, sir. But we should get you back to the safety of the bayou. You have to know something about who wants me dead and why. The guard had managed to move them towards the street while continuously looking around for safety. The judge didn't notice anything different in the quiet town, but this news did bother him. How and why? Who? Someone must have figured out something about him and decided that he was no longer wanted around. From my understanding, it is someone who knows you and works with you, but we only have gotten this information recently within the last 30 minutes or so. Nothing is solidly known yet, or if the threat is real, but we're dealing with it as if it is real. Knowing about this town, yes, it is real. They all want me gone for their own reasons, but I've kept them in their place. No one gets the better of me, Bart. Nobody. Not now or ever. With a glower, the judge marched off towards the dock area, where his airboat sat waiting to take him away. A noisy ride back home brought the judge safely back to his safe house. There was a busy buzz going through his security team, who moved about, trying to get things done and find out what was going on. DePercy only wanted to sit down for a quiet evening meal, but felt that was increasingly unlikely to happen, as he sat down on the couch in his living room. Will you fools be quiet, please, for a while, unless you found out something and then were coming to tell me? One of them, one of the few female guards who he'd hired, came up uneasily, scratching at the back of her head with a frown on her face. She looked to have lost a challenge or a bet in the judge's eyes, and now was the one who'd been selected to talk to him. That wasn't good at all, though they did fear him, which was somewhat of a good thing. Yes, what is it, darling? Well, you have a visitor in your office, sir. He's been carefully watched over so he doesn't do anything or look at anything he's not supposed to, but we felt like we should bring him up there. Who is it? He gave the initials VC. Also, there's another person who wanted to see you, a preacher, the one with the snake. Said he wanted to talk about a computer or something. That one is out on the deck. DePercy offered a curt nod as he got up from his chair, still tired, and headed outside. The mystery man could wait for a moment. James Corpse, preacher extraordinaire, stood out on the deck, smoking his cigar and staring out at the murky waters below. The judge took in the sight and waved away a nearby guard. Why am I back here, and why do I have the feeling that you're bestowing that thing upon me? Corpse pointed towards the old computer tower that was by his feet. I thought the church might need some help. Lies, lies, lies. Okay, you're a gang member of some repute. Probably still are, or may not be, don't know. To some extent you're running money scams where you can. I'm giving you this to protect it. And what am I getting out of this? What am I protecting it from, and who am I protecting it from? Admiral, all the information I need is backed up on there. to release hail on this hellscape of a town and state. There are signals out there that people don't want me to do as I say I'm doing. I will teach them that they will want that, and I will prove it to them, if need be. And you trust the former crook to hold on to it? You wouldn't do that without a heavy backup plan. You want to legitimize your scam on your snake preaching, and the soon-to-be governor of this fine state might just be able to help you out. James merely nodded and scooped up the ancient computer. I'm going to tell everyone you gave this to me, by the way. Now, why would you do that? I don't trust you, you don't trust me, so I want people to know that this is from you and they know that the secrets are out and about. They won't come searching for it, but they'll know it's there. Although, depends on what happens in the future. Maybe I won't get a chance to say it, maybe I will. I'm sure you'll do your usual stuff to keep stuff quiet. The judge shrugged to this. That would be fine, he guessed, since it didn't really stop his plans. People knew about a computer tower. He was just gifting it to the church, and the church needed help. It wasn't bad. So he merely turned around and headed back inside his home. A jog upstairs brought him into his office, where the guard and this new mysterious man were. He entered the space and looked at the black-suited man. He appeared to be terribly uncomfortable in those clothes in this humidity. Pity for him, though, since there was nothing he could do about it. There was no air conditioning to be had up in this house. De Percy decided to move to a seat as the man rose gently from his chair, but the judge waved for him to sit back down. Welcome to my humble home, sir. Who are you and what do you want? I'm Agent Victor Costa with the Federal Investigation Unit out of the capital of your fine state. I've come to talk to you about a few things. How lucky for me. Do I get further explanation, or is this it? That's all I get. The man who called himself Agent Victor sat forward, offering a grin, and a card showed that he did indeed work for the government. General inquiries into the truth of some rumors around here. Which also, the judge found himself growling in frustration, since this conversation was slowly going nowhere fast. It's about your father and his bribery schemes that duped a couple hundred people out of a lot of money. We are following up on a lead that says you know something about this. I don't know anything about that. And you, sir, are lying to me about why you're here. The agent seemed unperturbed by this accusation at him as he fiddled with the pen that he'd drawn out of his pocket. There are stories going around that you have picked up where your father has left off. Now, we're probably sure that that isn't totally true and are willing to ignore some stuff. But what we wanted to know is why you are connected with various gangs operating within the state. You try mostly bankruptcy cases and debt collection. As a judge, you try as many cases, you come across all sorts, and you make many connections. All of the gangs operate on the other side of the state, and haven't had a single connecting thread to any of your caseload so far. I have connections with people, plenty of people have connections with other people they don't work with, and, it goes on and on. We know plenty of people. It's not my fault that I know people, and I happen to talk to people. For example, I know many a judge, and judges try many criminal cases, and, we make connections, and connections make connections. But rarely do those connections result in a rise of crime rate that crosses state borders, and has really struck home around this area, but not completely this area yet. This was getting agitating for De Percy. He was being badgered in such a way about his private business. Who was this agent? Was he here to make a deal, or just show off that the government was working on something? He didn't seem to be from the area, so it was hard to tell which way things were leaning. I deny whatever you're implying, Agent Victor. Well, then they'll run for governor by increasing crime and appearing hard on the downtrodden isn't true. I would never do such a thing. That would sound terrible for a person running for governor. I'm sure you wouldn't do any of that, since it's very much criminal, and that an investigation has been launched into connections you have, and you might be hearing about subpoenas. You're not currently a suspect, but we have issued a subpoena to request your delightful presence at the federal court about this matter and your father, and loose connections. Please do show up when it arrives. The agent rose from his chair, pulling out an envelope from one of his inner pockets, and dropped it onto the desk. De Percy merely stared at it as the agent left. Moments ticked by, and everything had fallen quite silent as he took in his thoughts. A sudden loud bang broke the moment, and the judge shot out of his chair. Shit, the feds know everything. I have to hide my stuff. He took a jerky step away from his desk as he thought all about this, and then listened for a moment. A gunshot. It definitely sounded like a gunshot, but maybe it was one of his security officers shooting off in the bayou at something. Maybe it was the feds, though. But the feds wouldn't blindly be shooting, and the sound of several follow-up gunshots didn't seem like them. It was different. Was it the assassin? His mind tried to think about who wanted him dead, and kept him coming back to either the mayor or the sheriff. Aside from Powell, what would they have to gain from this, though? No answer was coming, and he approached the door, listening as more gunshots rang out and the air was filled with them. He dithered about the door to see what was going on, but could see nothing from his peaks beyond. It was not good and unsafe to move about with bullets flying through, and so far none had arrived up here, but that was only a matter of time. A small silence fell over the house. The judge rushed outside to the deck, overlooking everything, and stared down at the sight below, trying to see what was going on near the docks. Do not destroy my home. Be careful where you shoot. Where is this intruder anyway? With all of that said, he fled back inside, trying to find cover as more gunshots erupted around the area. He went back to his office for a while, but more gunshots upon more gunshots kept coming, and so he decided, he needed a gun, but he couldn't find any in his office, and he stepped back out into the upstairs hallway. And so he looked down at the sight of the living room below. The sight of gore and bloodshed were below. It wasn't pretty and reminded him that it was unlikely that this person was friendly. The upside is it seemed rather unlikely that this was about anything local or his run for governor, but what else could it be? He looked over and saw the fleeting man headed towards the stairs, but he wasn't entirely sure, and then the sound of footsteps made him snap and look to his right to see a haggard and wounded man with a glare in his eyes emerge from there. Who are you? An average person. The judge flinched as the man fired, and he tried to run back into his office, but a bullet had found its target, hitting him in the abdomen at a glance of a blow. He stumbled a bit, but kept his feet and kept moving towards the door. Are you getting rich off of this? Are you in league with that damned hospital? I have no idea what you're talking about. You don't live here in this area. What, as I know all people that come before my court. That's the only way you would know about any such things. Who are you? Average person, as I said, here to help settle debts owed. The debts will still stay, even if you kill me. A judge's rulers must stand, and no state government is going to undermine their own judges. The paperwork can disappear, though, and that is the key to my saving all of this situation. The judge shook his head as he dashed into the office. In a rush, they were both in there, and Percy at his desk, fishing about for something by the time Peter got in. He was freaking out and trying to steady himself as he finally managed to find the pistol he had hidden near the cabinets and pulled it up to aim it at Peter. They both fired, and after a pause of a second, the judge fell backwards, landing on a floor behind the desk. Death, if it was coming, was slow and all over the place, as he lay there trying to figure it all out. He felt like he couldn't move, and he kept questioning himself. Where had he gone wrong? Had he gone wrong? He could survive if only he could move. Maybe the wound was fatal, but he couldn't tell. It was all wrong. There was a chance, but each attempt to move his body, it refused to respond to even the simplest of commands. He couldn't even urge his voice to speak out, or to get his muscles moving. It just left him staring at the ceiling. He could hear things faintly, but there was mostly just a ringing noise in his ears. Minutes passed as things began to grow cold and tired as he waited for someone to show up and save him from this cold hell spot. After an eternity, he swore things were starting to warm up, and he could hear slightly the sound of voices and footsteps pounding about the place. No one now came up to him to help him, as things then slipped very hot and cold at the same time, and quietly he slipped into an endless quiet as his eyes finally shut. The end of part 10 of A Judge, a Jury, and a Sheriff. The end of the story. Thank you for listening.